Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land of which we record. We pay our respects to elders, past and present, who are part of the world's oldest continuing culture and the first storytellers. We acknowledge the importance of supporting health for all peoples, now and in the future. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are warned that this podcast may contain the voices and names of people who've passed. Welcome to the HeartKids podcast. Join us to hear stories of Australians affected by childhood heart conditions. On this podcast, you'll hear from heart kids and teens, heart adults, parents, carers and family members, cardiologists and other health professionals. My name is Rachael Knowles and I'm one of your hosts. I'm a journalist and I live with a congenital heart condition. I was born with tricuspid atresia and had Fontan surgery at the age of 2. I'm passionate about people and their stories, and I'm excited to walk with you on this journey as we share experiences and learn more about those of us living with childhood heart conditions.
For many of us with childhood-onset heart disease, growing up with surgeries, appointments, complications and uncertainty about the future can leave a mark, even if it's not always visible. Today, I'm thrilled to be chatting with Stacey Micallef, sexologist, relationship and trauma counsellor based in Geelong. Stacey is passionate about supporting sexual being for everybody from her practice, Everybody Sexology. We're really excited to have her here to discuss sex, sexual relationships, communication, and so much more for those of us with childhood-onset heart disease.
Some clients come to me in a state where I was once upon a time where I couldn't even say the word sex without going bright red. So for a lot of people, I'm just getting them connected with their body.
Before we start, a content note. Some topics in this episode may be sensitive for some listeners, and we will be talking about sex, sexual health, and do briefly touch on sexual violence. Please take care while listening and pause if you need to. Welcome to the podcast. I'm really excited to have you here. Where are you dialing in from?
I'm coming in from Geelong. I'm currently sitting on the lands of the Wadawurrung people.
Beautiful. Geelong is gorgeous.
Yeah, it's a lovely area. I'm in a nice little coastal spot, which is great, just outside of Geelong.
Oh my God, that's lovely. Look, you are a clinical sexologist. I'm so interested to kind of pick your brain about your knowledge and I guess first off, what inspired you to pursue this particular career path?
Yeah, it's a career I came across later in life. I'm both a counsellor and sexologist, so they're both very relevant with a lot of overlaps in the work that I do in both of those spaces. I started studying sexology more to try and understand my own past and my disconnection with my own mind and body. Whilst I didn't grow up with a heart condition, I did grow up with an autoimmune condition that called psoriasis that left my body. Basically, you kind of look like you're scarred from head to toe. I had quite a serious, bout of psoriasis from age 6. And it kind of allowed me to really disconnect from myself because I guess I was probably told a lot in life, which a lot of the people growing up with heart conditions would also experience and feel familiar with, that there's almost this like strengths-based focus that you have to have around ignoring what's going on for you. Don't let it hold you back from anything. Don't let it stop you from going and doing the things that you love. And whilst mine wasn't stopping me from anything functional, physically knowing that I had a body that was very scarred and a lot of kids made a lot of fun of, having to kind of just be resilient, and it meant I wasn't allowed to feel sad about what was going on for me. I felt like I couldn't show my parents that I was upset or that I was hurt or that kids were picking on me. I felt telling them kind of meant that I was failing at being resilient and holding myself back from things. So I think that's probably something that a lot of your audience might resonate with. And what that led to was a real disconnection from my own emotions and shutting down of those parts of myself, which then meant I really disconnected from all things vulnerable and emotional. And so I kind of at age 35 discovered how shut down I was. And for the first time discovered my own sexual side, my own connection with pleasure, being vulnerable. And I just really wanted to study how I'd gotten to that space. So that's how I fell into sexology, long story.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's massive. And like, I'm really interested to like do this podcast with you because I think so much of what you've said is so incredibly relevant for like anybody who has chronic condition, anybody with a disability, anybody without like HeartKids, like it's a really, really relevant experience that I don't think many of us come to terms with.
Yeah, I was actually listening to your own episode earlier, Rachel, and you were talking about exactly this. And there is, as you were saying in that episode, there's a lot of grief. You have to kind of go through a process of accepting this is what I went through, connecting with yourself and reconnecting that emotions are okay. You can share, hey, it sucks that I feel this way. It feels hard that I can't join in and do those things that other kids are maybe doing, or that I'm having a harder time doing it. Yeah, so allowing, if kind of parents, I guess parents listening to this, that allowing kids to, yes, be resilient, foster that resilience, and that their condition doesn't have to hold them back, but also celebrate that they might be feeling mixed emotions about it, and create space for sadness, for grieving, for anger, for all of those emotions that we often hold back kids back from feeling those negative emotions. And thankfully these days there's a lot more awareness around allowing kids to feel feelings and not shut them down. So it's something that I think the next generation of kids are being given a lot more space to feel, which is great.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that's something that I've learned from the podcast is with my heart kid, my parents had a very different experience, but listening to like heart parents in particular, I'm like, like we're both sad about this and we both feel a lot of grief about this, but we feel like we can't talk to each other about it.
Yeah, because they're worried about making you feel bad and you're worried about making them feel bad. So everyone's kind of staying silent.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Everyone's sad, but we can't talk about it. So yeah, I'm I'm feeling very validated that you're already talking about this, and thank you for listening to my story. That was very kind of you. I'm really interested because I have always like wondered about seeing a sexologist and kind of what that experience would be like or what that learning would be like. What is like a typical day for you? Do you do like in-clinic appointments, or what's your sort of style?
Yeah, so I typically see around 4 to 5 clients a day. I often work with clients where there's a lot of overlap of maybe some attachment wounds or childhood trauma or trauma from later life events. So I try to limit the amount of clients I work with because otherwise it can be very overwhelming on my nervous system to deal with too much kind of trauma in one day. So I like to take care of my own nervous system and make sure that I'm not putting myself over capacity. But I work with quite a mix. So my business, Everybody's Sexology, is purposefully branded in that I work with people with all sorts of bodies and everybody is welcome. So I work with a real mix. I might be working with clients. I specialize a lot in neurodivergence. I personally learned later in life that I was growing up in an autistic body and an ADHD body or brain. So that kind of became a real passion of mine, working in that space. I work a lot with gender diverse people. I work a lot with queer folks, a lot within the LGBTIQA plus SB community. I work with relationships, individuals. Some days I'm doing very much sex focus. Some days I'm doing a lot of just counselling focus. So my ADHD brain thrives off the difference that I get to work with. And yeah, pain is my other specialty. I spend a lot of time working with bodies experiencing chronic pain.
I think that's the thing that like I can imagine that being a sexologist, you kind of get funneled into like it's just sex, but sex is actually something that's connected so much to health, so much to our mental health, our physical health. Like your skill set is huge. It's not just intimacy.
Yeah, I kind of fell into sexology because I couldn't really find what I was looking for when I was trying to work out my own kind of disconnect. There's a lot of sexologists out there that are very focused on communicating to people who are already connected with their sexual side and are more kind of pleasure focused. Whilst pleasure is definitely something that I'm aiming for with clients, Some clients come to me in a state where I was once upon a time where I couldn't even say the word sex without going bright red. So for a lot of people, I'm just getting them connected with their bodies and working with a lot of medical trauma, particularly that's really relevant to your audience, where a lifetime of your body being medicalized leaves physical trauma inside the body. And it also leads to that disconnect that we were talking about earlier with mind and body just being a little bit kind of either dissociated or just disconnected in some way.
Yeah, totally. And I'm really interested. So in my 9-to-5 job, I work specifically with misinformation, and I love to ask people this question. For you in your field, what is probably some of the most frustrating pieces of misinformation that you've heard about sex, sexual being, or sexology?
Sex is a space with a lot of misinformation. I'm going to focus on one thing because I could literally spend an entire day talking about the misinformation. Probably one of the biggest things that I see impacting people is that people, particularly around their first sexual experiences, and then they carry this with them into later sexual experiences, is that they should kind of be experts in sex and know what they're doing almost from the get-go. And everyone thinks that everyone else around them knows what they're doing and that everyone's having great and amazing sex and that they're the only one having challenges. They're the only one with no desire or feeling sexual pain or feeling that, they lost an erection. Sex education, particularly in Australia, is pretty poor. We don't learn about so many things about our bodies that we should be learning. We don't learn about the timings of desire and how arousal works, what to be looking for in your body, what to be looking for in your partner or multiple partners' bodies, or self, if it's with self. We're just not taught about these things. We're not taught that it's completely okay to lose an erection during sex and it doesn't mean it has to be the end. We're not taught that the statistics around orgasm and that doesn't have to be the goal. So, yeah, I guess the biggest myth is that everyone around you knows what they're doing. If everyone kind of just took a step back and realized that everybody is different, and even if you've had sex with one person really successfully one way, the next person you have sex with, that exact same thing might not work at all. So it's a constant, I guess, activity of upskilling and communication.
I love that. I think that's the thing. I can remember somebody saying to me once, everybody thinks that everybody else is having better sex than them, but in reality we're all having very different sex at different times and different experiences. It's a very confusing experience, I think. I'm so excited to be able to pick your brain, and I think particularly for our listeners who, most have early onset childhood heart disease. Some don't. We cater to a lot of different people with different conditions, different surgeries, different physical limitations. And obviously those can impact the way that people approach their sexual health and their relationships. And I guess from your perspective, just on top layer, what are the key ingredients to have a positive sexual experience for any person, regardless of what their body may be like?
The first would be communication. As I was kind of just saying, every single body is different. So if you're expecting, I know what to do here in this sexual situation, it might not work for the next person. So you need to work out what turns that individual person on. I love to do a little activity with all my clients where we do a bit of a touch activity between kind of the fingertips and the elbow, and really slowly running fingers down the hands all the way to the elbow. Now, some people will tell me, oh my gosh, that feels so blissful and heavenly, and that is just, like it's bliss. The next person might tell me, feels whatever. The next person might say, oh my gosh, that's so ticklish. I didn't like it. And then occasionally I'll hear from someone, that was painful. So that activity I use to highlight how different people's experiences are of just receiving touch in just that part of the body. Now translate that to all other different areas of your body, different types of touch. Just touch alone, which is often a key part of foreplay, physical foreplay, or sex itself, can be such a different experience for every single person that you meet with. So you've got to communicate. You have to normalize that and learn about the person sitting in front of you. Communication's also then a key part of the next critical ingredient, which is consent. So consent is something that thankfully these days there's a lot more conversation around. That's kind of one of the other myths, is that consent means, oh, we have to ruin the flow, or it's such a turn off. But for a lot of people, consent can actually be a huge turn on. For a lot of people, it can promote safety and it can allow them to actually feel comfortable to then go and engage in things sexually that maybe they wouldn't be if there wasn't this ongoing checking in. So consent needs to not just be once, are we okay with what we're doing? It needs to be firstly explicit around what are we going to be doing. It needs to be enthusiastic. If someone's on the fence, it wouldn't be going ahead. You want somebody to be enthusiastic and continual. So consent needs to be constantly checking in. Hey, does that feel good? Does this feel nice? How could this touch feel even better for you? Like, it can be done in different ways. It doesn't have to be as explicit as, is this okay? It can be, oh, how would this feel even better for you? What would you like me to do next? The other key ingredients would be education. So teaching yourself around how your body works so that you can then share with your partner what it is that you like. So learning your own body, learning about sex, going above and beyond what we're taught in school. Like, it just really isn't. It doesn't hit the bar what we learn in school. And there's a lot of amazing sex educators out there that would love to see our education system changed. But unfortunately, we have what we currently have. And whilst it's getting better, it's just not enough. So you're going to have to do extra work. And no, porn is not the place to self-educate. It's a space where, absolutely erotic films, porn, there's absolutely a beautiful place for it, but it's not the space for education. That's not realistic, and that's not how most people's bodies work. And 95% of what we have out there is unfortunately varying levels of degradation towards particularly those assigned female at birth.
Yeah, I think a great disclaimer, a very good disclaimer. I'm really interested, you talked about working with people who have a lot of medical trauma, and obviously that can be a lot of our community. What are the sort of concerns that you kind of regularly see with those patients? What are the worries that are coming up about their sexual health?
Quite a few things. One, because of a lot of medical trauma, there's a lot of people with sexual pain. So because their body's storing the trauma, they might cognitively be telling themselves, yeah, I'm okay with what happened. I know this is what I went through. So cognitively, they're okay with it, but actually the trauma is stored inside of their body. Particularly if you've undergone a lot of surgeries and a lot of people have had control of your body, maybe whilst you're under anaesthetic, there might be trauma that you're not necessarily even aware of, but is sitting inside of you. For some people, that can manifest as sexual pain. So I work with a lot of people on reducing sexual pain, and if we can't reduce it, at least removing the distress that's occurring or connected with it. Other concerns are around functioning, particularly so if we're thinking about people with heart conditions. So sex, often, a big part of sex is the blood flow to the genital area, leading to engorgement or erections. And if your heart condition means that your circulation has some limitations, then your body might not be able to get engorgement or erections in the way that other people might be able to. So there might be some concerns and worries and challenges in that space. So normalizing, how do I work with my body? This is my body's capacity of what it can do functionally. How do I work with that if it feels like it's not meeting their, say your personal expectations or your partner or partner's expectations? Other things would be around body image. So I have a lot of people that if they've got a lot of medical scarring, feeling, how do I show my partner? Some people have a real discomfort with their scarring, and it's working through that so that they feel okay to be able to feel better about themselves. And then also sometimes it's around conversations around like disclosing to partners so just building that safety and comfort around your own body. Some other things would be, like even what you mentioned in your episode was around contraception. Mm-hmm. So depending on what medications you are on might be playing a role with contraception. Risk of clots, so particularly like estrogen-based contraceptions can lead to increased chance of clotting. So really engaging your medical practitioners and cardiologists, GPs, whoever is looking after your care at the time around maybe what do I need to consider when I'm entering into sexual experiences. I kind of encourage parents to have their kids around age 13-ish plus chatting with their cardiologist about things. What do I need to consider when I'm entering into the sexual space as I'm entering into that world? It's something that you do need to disclose when chatting with medical practitioners, because there are certain contraceptions that just won't be available to some people because of the risks that come with using those. Family planning as well. Depending on the condition, it can impact fertility. There might be risks for your body to actually carry a pregnancy. Having conversations, particularly if you're a parent with your kids, around what are we going to do if there's an unplanned pregnancy? Knowing their body and what their body is capable of, but then what do we do if the unplanned, unexpected happens? Because it's not something that you want to not be prepared about. You want to be having that conversation ahead of time so that they have a plan, you have a plan, and the kids know that they can come and talk to you if and when that occurs.
Yeah, I think sex is like a very uncomfortable conversation to have for most people, but I think it's exacerbated when you do have a complex relationship with your body. I guess, why is it so difficult for people with medical trauma to be able to talk about our body or to advocate for our body?
It's mixed for everyone. For some people, there's a lot of dissociation with their body from a really young age, particularly if going to the doctor was traumatic or it meant that you were missing out on things. There's anger, there's grief, there's sadness, there's all sorts of emotional things tied up in your body. That disconnection that we spoke about earlier can lead to you not even actually noticing what's going on in your body and just having a very blasé, it'll be right, it'll be fine. There can also be the opposite end where there's a lot of fear of anything to do with their body. I'm so afraid to engage in this. For example, I'm making this scenario up, but let's say somebody was, because of their heart condition, there were limitations around the physicality of what they can do. And sex is a physical place where there might be high energy involved. Fearing, oh my gosh, like I don't want to make myself like at risk here. So there might be a real avoidance or fear of sex. So it's working out, what are some other ways? Like sex doesn't have to be this high energy, high octane event. Sex can be done in so many different ways. But yeah, there's lots of reasons as to why people might be, disconnected with their body. Are there other reasons you can think of working in the space that you do that I haven't mentioned?
Yes. I think that's something that's been, like everything you're saying, I'm like, yes. And I think, I'm learning, I'm 28 now, and I've had an experience of sexual violence, and I've had to look at the experiences and the relationship that I have with my body and I suppose the early medical trauma that was unpleasant for me and how that contributed to my relationship to my body.
Yeah.
And how that had manifested in my sex life and how, unfortunately, I came across this circumstance. So it's been really interesting to kind of, unravel that way that I felt about my body and try and reconnect. And reconnecting with your body is so daunting. I hated it when I used to do it all the time. I used to go to Pilates, like yoga, a lot of somatic yoga. It was really hard when I first started, but it's getting easier. And it's getting a lot easier in my sex life as well. Like I suppose disconnect manifests in a lot of panic attacks, a lot of not being able to be, a lot of dissociation.
Yeah.
But I think a really important thing that I wish that I had realised when I began being sexually active was the way that I felt about my body and the disconnect that I had.
Yeah.
And I wish that I could have that conversation a lot earlier instead of having it now at 28 and doing that work now, I think is something that I advise. It's an awkward conversation, sex, but I think the earlier you have it when you do have early medical trauma, the better it is for your health.
Absolutely. And firstly, I just want to acknowledge that, like, that's awful that you went through that experience, and I'm sorry that you had to go through that in life. We do see, unfortunately, when people have a lot of disconnection with self, that there is a lot of, sometimes there's sexual violence, sometimes there's also kind of what I've termed consensual unwanted sex.
Yeah.
Where we say yes to sexual experiences that we're not actually wanting. As somebody that went through a lot of that through my life, where I consented to years of sex because I thought that was how you kept a relationship, and I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know how to connect with my body in a way that allowed me to actually see sex as anything other than a tool to keep a partner in a relationship. And sexual violence and consensual unwanted sex is something that I see a lot in people who have that disconnection with their body. One of the things that I encourage all my clients to do, particularly people who are in a similar space, to go and practice having conversations around sex. We often just walk around in these silos with everyone having all these experiences, but nobody's sharing or talking with each other. Find a trusted friend, or if you don't feel like you have a trusted friend, find a medical practitioner or a sexologist or someone that you can go and start having these conversations with. Sometimes gaining reconnection with mind and body starts with just acknowledging the disconnection that's there. Some people don't even necessarily realize the level of disconnection that they have. I know it took me probably a good year to unpack the level of disconnection. So I've forgotten what our actual initial question was. But yeah, communication, again, it comes back to that. So start practicing chatting with friends, normalizing that early myth that sex doesn't have to be a space where we're all experts.
Yeah, no one is an expert. Even if somebody thinks they're an expert, they are not an expert.
I'm the first to say, like, I know a lot, but it doesn't mean that I'm going to be entering sexual experiences, getting everything A+ every time. No.
I'm really interested to ask you, because in part of my process, I think I have been learning. So I have a sternotomy scar. And I am very comfortable with my scars. I don't think about them often. One time I was intimate with somebody and they thought it was a giant stretch mark, which was a bit interesting. But I had a habit when I was probably early on in like my sexual life. I would disclose my heart condition to people immediately, just because I knew that was something that I had to do. They had to know this. It seemed like, but then working with my therapist, she was like, well, you need to feel safe in disclosing that in a sexual setting. So we need to think about why you disclose that, how you disclose that information being part of that moment. And she was very much like, sometimes you don't need to do that if you don't feel safe enough to do that. So I'm really interested in your advice for people who are sexually active, who are unsure of how to go about this conversation about their body, particularly when their physical body might impact the sex that they're having?
Firstly, let's talk about the when part, and then we'll talk about the how part. So the when part is different for everybody. Your therapist was really great in asking you, what's the reason for you disclosing? So for some people, it might actually be to build safety. There might be safety in really early on bringing up something that they feel carries a lot of concern for them. And so they don't necessarily want to invest in time with people that are going to have a negative reaction towards this thing that they're concerned about. For some people, it's about, well, I don't want to disclose that until I feel really safe with them, because this is something within me that I feel really vulnerable about or scared to bring up or I'm worried about, and I want to build the emotional part first. There's no right way or wrong way to do this. There's no optimal time to disclose. It's about what feels right for you and for the reasons why you're wanting to disclose. Sometimes there might be other things that you could maybe disclose first if it's about building safety, but you don't necessarily want to disclose your heart condition or your scarring or your limitations. So you might kind of put something else out there that might kind of be a bit of a similar type thing, but you don't have to give away this bit of information you're not yet wanting to give away. Sometimes I have clients that, and I love this one personally, around it allows me to test if they're a red flag or a green flag person by their reaction. So I don't have to waste my time with these people that don't, firstly, show curiosity or interest in me and my body and my experience. For some people, that's really important to hear that. For some people, they're looking for somebody that just has a real nonchalant reaction and it's like, yeah, doesn't bother me. Everyone's wanting something different. So what is it that you're wanting, and what is it that would help you feel safe to then proceed? One thing I do recommend is I probably would shy away or not kind of recommend, unless there was a real positive reason to, is to not just go and disclose it in the moment. I would have that conversation in a time where sex isn't kind of imminent. If you're kind of waiting until like, oh, sex is about to happen now, I'll disclose, you're adding a lot of pressure to yourself to have that discussion at a time when things are escalating. It can be hard to talk in those moments, or to sometimes we might sometimes, particularly if you are somebody that's a people pleaser, or if you get the reaction that you're not necessarily looking for, you might still go and engage because you don't know how to shut it down, because there's a part of you that feels concerned about their reaction. So I'm a big advocate for having that conversation away from sexual experiences. Maybe if you know the next time you're catching up with them, it's likely to be on the table, that might be a good time to disclose, or having a conversation. Yeah, just I wouldn't leave it till the moment. That's my only advice.
I agree. I think that's the thing where you work yourself up with these things. And I think it's, we talk a lot about like body image, particularly with scarring from surgeries. And I think something, I can't remember who said it to me, but somebody was like, nobody's looking at it as much. Nobody's thinking about it as much as you are.
Correct.
Nobody's worrying about it as much as you are. Like, that's not something to worry.
Yeah, it's very true. It's a lesson I learned probably later in life, but I was completely scarred head to toe in my psoriasis. There wasn't an inch of me that wasn't, if you know what psoriasis looks like, it's not the most pleasant to look at. Well, that's the way I kind of see it because I lived in it. It wouldn't bother me looking at anybody else's psoriasis. Just my own was how I felt about it. And it really bothered me. And I thought I was just walking around in this disgusting, yucky body, because that's what kids on the playground at age 6 were telling me. And I carried that with me my whole life. And then I realized that people actually didn't care. And that shocked me. I couldn't actually comprehend it. And it took me a really long time before I felt accepting of my body. And I just remember the relief every time after having that conversation with someone saying, does it not bother you? I would just carry that expectation that this was going to be this huge, big deal.
Mm. That's it. And it's like maybe 30 seconds and then we're on to the next thing. Like it's kind of crazy because you do build it up in your head and you have the moment. I remember the first time that I was like, oh, it's a surgery scar. And they're like, oh, cool. Anyway, I was like, oh, my God.
Yeah. Whereas most people actually see scars in particular as really cool. Oh, my gosh, that's a story. What happened? Most people see scars as amazing and really interesting and something unique about you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's it. It's pretty cool. The chicks dig it. When, I suppose, in terms of that, in the same vein, like if we're struggling with our sexual confidence, what are some... what's some things we can have in our toolkit for when we need to feel a little bit more empowered in the sexual space?
Yeah. I think firstly, spending time to get to know your own body. A lot of people who have that disconnection with kind of mind, body, their own pleasure. Not everyone, but I see a lot of the time that there's no interest in kind of self-pleasure or masturbation, which means that then there's a disconnection or a lack of understanding in terms of maybe what you enjoy or what turns you on. So to build confidence, I would encourage discovering that for yourself, finding ways to do that work for you. Not everyone's self-pleasure story is going to look the same, and you might have heard friends doing it one way and that did nothing for you. It doesn't mean that there's not lots of other ways to do it. I have a beautiful audio that I share with a lot of clients that's a self-guided kind of body mapping, reconnection. Arousal is not the aim. It can happen, but it's about connecting with your body. So finding different ways to do like guided mapping of your body, and getting to know your own genitals. So go and look in the mirror if that's something you haven't done. There's some wonderful resources out there that can really help normalize your own body. There's often a lot of, these days, particularly labiaplasty is a really growing trend because we don't see the diversity of vulvas out there that we kind of should be seeing, but we don't see in this country. I was fortunate to go and live in Finland when I was 15. That was a real pivotal changing point in my life for body confidence because I got to see naked bodies around me left, right and center. Being in, the sauna or the sauna is part of their culture. Naked with friends on a weekly basis, naked with family every day. It really shaped how I saw bodies. So one resource out there that I can guide people towards is going and looking at different anatomy libraries out there. I do have a link on my website, everybodysexology.com.au, which links to, there's a penis library, there's a vulva library, and then there's another one that Ellie Sedgwick from Comfortable in My Skin, who's been a wonderful photographer going around Australia, photographing vulvas across all ages, body types, just really normalizing your body. So yeah, having confidence and just feeling good about self first can play a role. And if you're stuck in that you can't shift from, if there is, self-loathing, go and seek some mental health support, whether that's a psychologist or a counsellor or a sexologist. There's a wide range of supports out there that can help with that. Particularly, I'm a big fan of bilateral eye movement therapies where they move their hands like side to side in front of your eyes, and it helps you reprocess maladaptive thought patterns.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's a really big thing. Something that's helped me is like whenever my housemate and I, we're both, women of the 2000s era. And so, I've got a lot of body image stuff. Whenever we get a little bit too much head noise, we go to the women's baths and it's the best thing ever because topless women everywhere.
Yes.
We get to see different bodies and
Yes.
everybody is so beautiful and everybody's so kind to each other. And it's nice sometimes to, have that perspective of like, oh, we all have different bodies.
Yeah.
We all look different.
Yeah. And if you have access to spaces like that, take advantage of it. You're going to be so uncomfortable the first time you do it.
Oh, yeah.
And you're going to feel really awkward, but it's a beautiful experience. And I promise you, you will walk away feeling, even if it's just the tiniest bit better about yourself, there will be some improvement in the way that you feel about your body.
Oh, 100%. 100%. I'm also really interested. So, getting comfortable with your own body, but then also, I suppose, taking that into a space with a partner.
Yep.
Supporting a partner with a heart condition, I think we think about that in a lot of ways in terms of the admin and the kind of like health appointment load.
Yeah.
But in terms of sexually, I guess for partners who are listening, what are the most important things when you are engaging in sex with somebody who has a heart condition or does have a medical condition?
Yeah, it's a little bit different for everyone. There are some people where, particularly if they feel like they're in that caregiver role, kind of separating caregiving and this sexual being, for some people can be a challenge. But for general advice, I would just say making sure that you have really great communication between the two of you. So normalizing out of sex discussions around sex, having conversations around what do you like, what feels good, what isn't feeling good, is there anything that I need to know, take into account. Post-sex debriefs, I'm a huge fan of. There's resources out there, so like yes, no, maybe activities. They've kind of become popular in the last few years. There are tools sexologists have been using for quite some time around, but you can easily Google. They range in different qualities online, but it's a nice starting point that's free. Googling yes, no, maybe, or kink questionnaires that allow you to see what different activities might you all be interested in and some things that maybe you haven't quite thought of. So, for example, if you've got a partner where penetrative sex is too high energy and not something that they can engage in, different ways of having sex, or what if we use a blindfold and remove one sensory experience of sight that's going to enhance another sensory experience of touch? So it's going to change the way their body receives this touch, which might allow for different activities to be explored that feel really fun and engaging at times when maybe the body's not up for certain activities.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm in terms of, I suppose, tapping into what you just said about like different types of sex, there are some people in community who may have physical limitations, might not be able to have, penetrative sex. I guess what is your, I suppose, advice and recommendations on firstly having that conversation, but then being able to, I suppose, diversify the sexual experience so that pleasure and safety can still be there?
Yeah, physical limitations definitely don't have to limit your sexual experiences. In fact, sometimes they actually foster creativity, and sometimes with creativity comes even better sexual experiences. So sometimes it can actually be an asset to have a bit of a challenge to work around. As you mentioned, sex, if you're a heterosexual couple, does not have to be about penetrative intercourse. There's lots of other different ways of having sex. Same-sex relationships, different gender relationships, all sorts of different ways of having sex have existed for a really long time, and there's a lot of really creative ways out there to be sexual. Sex can even include not even touching of genitals. The human brain is what actually causes arousal. Orgasms aren't occurring because of genitals, they're occurring because of the brain. The brain is what is the biggest factor in that. So sex can look all sorts of ways. If there's limitations and you're feeling stuck, go and speak to that's probably where engaging a sexologist and chatting with people about different ways of how your relationship can be and look if you're feeling stuck. But yeah, I mean, there's oral sex, anal sex. There's all sorts of different sex, and just exploring touch. You can even have an orgasm without being touched, like just the tease alone, and there's all sorts of ways that sex can be done.
Beautiful. And I wanted to ask as well, I suppose, in the same, what is it? I think it's one of those kind of taboo things that we're still kind of coming to terms, particularly if you're like early in your sexual journey. But toys, what is your opinion of toys? How do they play a role? And I suppose how can they support your kind of sexual empowerment and feeling more comfortable with what you like?
Yeah, great. Love this. Normalize the toys. Toys can really enhance a sexual experience. I think they're really great for self-pleasure exploration as well. Toys, there's old school thoughts here, and some kind of people still kind of hold these myths that toys shouldn't be, toys are almost seen as cheating on your partner, or thankfully that's kind of becoming less and less common, and more people are more like, bring in the toys. They just add a bit of variety, and variety can be what a lot of people need in sexual experiences to not feel like it's routine and the same. Toys can also play a role in creating more accessibility. So particularly if you can't reach certain areas, or you want to be able to stimulate multiple parts all at once, toys can allow greater access to pleasure within the body. And exploring, what is it that you're wanting to get out of sex? What toys are going to help you get that out of sex? There's also, I'm a huge advocate for exploring different things.
Yeah, beautiful. I think as well, something that like I have recently had to learn when I'm in a relationship, but when I first was intimate with my partner, it was so awkward. And I thought, nah, this is not right. There is no spark. This was so awkward and uncomfortable. Obviously, we worked through that. We were both so awkward. We both liked each other so much. We were so nervous. And obviously, like that, I think that's a really common experience.
Very
like when
common.
you're having sex, it's so awkward. Like, how do you change positions without it being awkward? Like, what if you queef? Then it's like there's laughter and it's awkward. And like, what if your stomach's hanging out? I guess, can you please validate me in the fact that it is really awkward, but it's also supposed to be really fun because it's awkward?
Yeah, and I can validate that first sexual experience by using scientific research that shows that for people who can orgasm, that the first sexual experience has a much lower orgasm rate than your second and then your third sexual experience. So there's a lot of fumbling, there's a lot of learning each other's body, there's a lot of communication challenges. And I love what you said, that sex, for some people, what they're wanting to get out of sex is different. But for a lot of people, sex can be a space of fun, of humor, of laughter. Some people, sex is about intensity and dominance or submission. So everyone's reasons for engaging in sex are a little bit different. But there is absolutely nothing wrong with having queefing, farting, awkward moments, mishaps during sex. That's part of it. And that's part of the exploration. And for a lot of people, that actually enhances the sexual experience because it brings about laughter and takes away the pressure that this has to be perfect.
Totally. And I think that's something that like I have learned, and I'm appreciative to learn, is that actually like I feel most close to my partner when we have like an awkward moment and we have to laugh, and I'm like, anyway, stop it, let's move on. Like, it's very sweet. I guess I've asked you so many questions. Is there anything else that you can think of that you would like to share, or do you think that's really important for the community?
My brain's like, oh my gosh.
There's so much.
I think it's just about, firstly, like really, I can't emphasize enough normalizing conversations. And if you're not already having them with friends or partners, start normalizing that. Normalizing that not everyone's sexual experience is very different. It's completely okay if you, firstly, don't want sex at all. that's completely okay. If you want sex, but you want it to just be this one little nice routine-based way, and you feel like that, you just want to, what a lot of people call vanilla sex, just missionary, penetrative-based sex, if it's, penis and vagina type sex, that's completely okay. If you're interested in exploring lots of different things, if you want to have lots of different sexual partners, these days it's about creating whatever sexual experience you want to have. If you can imagine it, you can create it, as long as there is those key ingredients of communication, consent, education. We can't just jump into these things without kind of any of those key ingredients happening. And explore what it is that you want. Don't just necessarily feel like what you've been told sex should look like is how it should be. I know for myself, I was following a pathway of, I grew up in quite a conservative religious environment where sex was between a man and a woman, and you only had sex if you were in a married relationship. And, I had to shake off all of those beliefs around that I was sinning because I had sex outside of marriage. And eventually I came into connection with that actually I had a different sexual orientation, and I was, into people of the same sex. And that requires throwing out everything that you've been told about how you have to be, but it also requires you to be connected with yourself and to start noticing when things don't feel right. So yeah, my advice is just start trying to connect with your body. Start listening to what it is that your gut is telling you. What is your body signaling to you? If there's pain, that's your body communicating something to you. If there's migraines, if there's headaches, if there's nausea in the stomach, and nausea unless you went and ate something awful the night before, or maybe you've got gastro. If there's not a physical reason and you're experiencing these things, that's your brain signaling something to you. So start listening to your body, start tuning into what it is that it's telling you. And if you can't work it out, go and seek support and get help to help you work it out.
Yeah. And I think something that has been crucial in terms of my medical trauma is I used to get very frustrated at myself that I couldn't connect with my body, or I couldn't understand, or I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know how to communicate what I wanted because I didn't know how I felt. And I think having self-compassion is really important, realizing that, of course, I have this relationship with my body when you look at the experiences I had when I was younger. But for myself and what I want for my sexual health, I want to be able to move through that. And I want to have good sex and fun sex. So I think that's been a big part, as well as, having the self-compassion for yourself. Sex is awkward. Great.
I'm so pleased for you that you've been able to move through that. And I know you kind of earlier on were thinking, I'm 28, I should have gone through this earlier. I can tell you there's a lot of people that don't actually connect with their bodies until much older in life. So well done on actually connecting with yourself. It's something to celebrate.
But no, I thank you. And I think it's conversations like this, if I had listened to this when I was younger, who knows where we may have been. So thank you for coming on and having the conversation with me and holding this space, and just for sharing all of your wisdom. I've learned so much. I'm sure that people listening will also learn so much. So thank you.
Great. It's been an absolute pleasure.
This podcast deals with some heavy things. If this brings up anything for you or somebody that you love, it's important to reach out for help. The HeartKids helpline provides support, advice and guidance for people impacted by childhood heart disease. You can call the helpline on 1800 432 785. To access more information about childhood heart disease, as well as support from HeartKids, visit the website heartkids.org.au. The information on this podcast is not a substitute for medical advice from your doctor or healthcare team. Always talk to your doctor about matters that affect your health or your family's health.